You and I have been single-purposed. And you've been single-purpose for your art, I've been single-purpose for my whatever it is, my omnology, my trying to put all the arts and sciences and history together and crystallize them into new lenses with which other people can see the world, hopefully in entirely different ways. The world inside them and the world outside them. So to the extent that we are true to our single-purposing, we will become like those ants that take a stray half-inch out of the crowd and in the process explore that half-inch for the crowd and explore the crowd's ambit, the crowd's perception of its world.
Past, present, future. Time then gone. Now live, living now. Basking truth, forever gone. Cycle the dead leaves subside. Past victories fallen to dead slogans. Past victories fallen to dead slogans. Life lived now by the alive, living. Death celebrants collapse. Entropy and death cycle. Recycle, die. Recycle, die. Die over and over, never having lived. Those of true intent thrive, fortified, actualized. Even in death, forever live. Even in my death, I forever live. Forever. Death no longer has celebrants. Time lapsed in their frozen past. While true intent lives now. Cycle of intent. Cycle of intent. Recycled death collapse. Recycled death collapse. True will intent. Goodbye to death celebrants. Those that can't, won't, will never be, can never be replaced by true will, true intent, true intent, 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 intent. Intent, 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 intentions, true intent.
A duo. That's me and Marley, my friend Marley. That was emailing
yes,
you.
Marley
He's
Preston.
like, give him a record. That's our limited vinyl.
This is amazing. I don't
Just
even
came
have
out.
the. Wow! Look at this. Holy.
And there's
shit.
a centerfold I did of Marley.
Wow.
Marley's
amazing.
Defiance. It's about 5 feet.
Yeah, amazing.
By 2.
Amazing. If I lived like I lived when I was a college student, if my only luxury is having my assistants, which I desperately need, without them I couldn't think. I couldn't because I'd be sitting here making out checks to pay bills and
Yeah, you wouldn't have time to work.
no, I wouldn't have time to work. And I need to be a full-time thinker. I mean, it took me a long time to realize why one of my role models, Einstein, would walk out of the house at Princeton, his house near Princeton University, and would walk out of his house in the morning, get 2 blocks up the street, and why his wife would come running after him with her arms full, saying, "Albert, Albert, you forgot something." And it was because Albert was walking out in his bedroom slippers and his pajamas. He had forgotten to put on his clothes. And it took a long time to realize why that happened. It happened because he was so focused on understanding God's language and the universe, the underlying geometry of the universe. That took all his brain cells. He didn't have any brain cells left for anything else. And in an insect colony, if the insects need a lot of liquid, let's say, they'll take a couple of insects, and those couple of insects will hang from the ceiling, and they have two stomachs. One is a communal stomach, and one is a personal stomach. And in their communal stomach, they will stuff the other insects, ants or bees, will stuff as much water as they possibly can. And that will swell this ant up to such a point that the ant is not mobile anymore.
Wow.
Why? Because it's a single-purpose ant. It's been dedicated to a single purpose.
Water
and
tower.
It's through this single-purposing of ants, like the single-purposing of the queen, the single-purposing of the soldiers, that the colony manages to accomplish what it accomplishes. Well, you and I have been single-purposed. And you've been single-purpose for your art. I've been single-purpose for my whatever it is, my omnology, my trying to put all the arts and sciences and history together and crystallize them into new lenses with which other people can see the world, hopefully in entirely different ways. The world inside them and the world outside them. So, to the extent that we are true to our single-purposing, we will become like those ants that take a stray half-inch out of the crowd and in the process explore that half-inch for the crowd and explore the crowd's ambit, the crowd's perception of its world. So, but to the extent that we're sitting there paying bills and doing the stuff that normal people have to do, we can't be full-time thinkers.
No,
we can't explore the
I
boundaries.
spend a lot of my time trying to promote self-promotion
And you have
just
to do
to
that.
keep afloat.
Yeah, it's necessary too, and you learn things from it. But unfortunately, at a certain time of your life, there comes a harvest time. You've had a life of adventures, and you really have to harvest it. And to harvest it, you've got to promote. But the more other people can do the promoting for you, the more you can really
Exactly.
advance your harvest.
Exactly. I have my first assistant coming from Helsinki on Monday for 2
Wow.
weeks.
That's
And it's
fantastic.
her final project in art school.
That's fantastic.
And yeah, I need that. So
Right, and I need that too. So I put a notice up on Facebook. Now, Facebook, it's taken me years to acquire 3,000 friends on Facebook.
yeah, me too.
And
I'm not quite at 3,000, but close.
Right, but I now have a little over 3,000 friends, and I put on the word on Facebook that I needed an assistant. I got one reply from Montreal from a woman who is the what's it called, chargé d'affaires. She's the press spokesperson for the Department of Development, Environment, and Parks in Quebec. Very important position.
And she wanted to leave that?
She's 5'10" or something like that, and she's drop dead gorgeous, and she's 28
Wow.
years old. And she wanted to work with me because she feels that if she works with me, she can help change the world. Okay, she's going to work
amazing.
with me, but not as an assistant. And Anna got in touch with me from Oregon.
She moved here from Oregon?
Yes.
Portland or somewhere else?
It's a small town. I forget
Okay.
which town it is. But so she moved all the way from Oregon, and the other applicant that I got, the other two applicants that I got, one was at the USC, in I forget where, San Diego or something like that, and the other one is in Columbus, Ohio. Now, how the fuck would you get 4 people who really believe in your work? How would you manage to make contact with them, and how would they make contact with you if this were the pre-Facebook era?
I know.
So this is Mark Zuckerberg stepping out of the pack a little bit and coming back to society with a huge bounty. And that's your job and mine, too, except we don't do it the way Mark Zuckerberg does it. We do it with metaphor. We do it by grabbing hold of disturbing states and bringing them back to society. Richard Foreman, the god of avant-garde theater, who's a big fan of my work, does the same fucking thing. He wanders in the wilderness of himself until it hurts.
Yeah.
And from that pain, he derives his art. So that you come to know whatever the hell that pain means in a whole different way. And the first time, for the first 7 or 8 years that I knew Richard, I was stuck in a bed. So the thought of ever going to see his work was impossible. And then 1 year after I was finally able to get out of the house, I suddenly realized, schmuck, you don't have to sit in a bedroom anymore when Richard runs one of his plays. You can actually go into Manhattan to see one of them. So I went to see one of them, and leave it. When I was in college, the poet in residence, I get kidnapped a lot to run things. And the poet in residence said, okay, I want you to, in my poetry class, said, I want you to stay after class today. And as soon as everybody leaves, close the door. I've got something to say to you. So I closed the door when everybody left and came over to his desk, and he said, "You idiot. Last year I asked you to be on the staff of the literary magazine, and you never showed up. This year I'm telling you, you are the editor of the literary magazine. You are it. You don't even have a faculty advisor. The minute you walk out that door, you're it, the literary magazine." Well, somehow he managed to find the phrasing that made it just grabbed me. I was no way of getting out of that responsibility. And so I walked out into the corridor, and I looked as dazed and confused as hell. And when you're in classes with 150 people and you're one of the few students dialoguing with the professor and the other kids find what you're saying interesting, you develop people who know you, but you don't know them. And so one of those kids walked up to me in the corridor I'd never seen before, never registered before, and said, "You look like you're having a problem. Can I help you?" People are remarkable that way. And I said, "Yes, I've just been made the editor of the literary magazine, and I hate literary magazines." and
Wow.
He said, and remember, I grew up with guinea pigs and laboratory rats. I didn't grow up with humans because no humans wanted to have anything to do with me. So I was still learning social rituals like "hello, how are you, fine, thank you very much," things like that. So have a cup of coffee. I didn't really know what that meant. But I followed him downstairs, and we sat in a coffee shop, and he got coffee and I got water. And he said, "If you could do anything you wanted to do with the magazine, what would it be?" And I lit up, and I said it would be a picture book. So I turned it into an experimental graphics and literary magazine. And one of the things that I wanted to achieve was a piece in the center of the magazine whose words were incomprehensible and yet evoked all kinds of feelings in you you could not identify, and whose visuals did the same damn thing. And I was heavily influenced. I was writing all of my short stories, all my fiction in French, as I was considered one of the best French students in the country at that time.
Amazing.
And yeah, so I was heavily influenced by French literature, and I wanted to pull all these elements together, and the person I got to write the copy didn't quite achieve it. And the visuals didn't quite achieve it. But that's what I wanted to do, and what I really wanted to do, Liba. I mean, the magazines are behind you, and they're these big, gorgeous things, and they caused a splash, a huge splash,
Really?
when they came out. But what I really wanted to do was have you open a page and it be more than a pop-up book. I wanted it to be a surround experience, an experience that surrounded you on every side. So when I finally went to Richard, one of Richard's plays, and saw it for the first time, it seemed that everything I had wanted to achieve in that literary magazine but had been unable to achieve, complete with the French influences, the incomprehensibility that drew on feelings inside of you you couldn't identify, that stirred things in the second self, all that was happening in his fucking plays.
Great.
Now, none of that's happening in my writing. It doesn't show up in my books, but somehow Richard sensed the common element. And it was I just can't explain to you what an incredible experience it was to see one of his plays. And this is the same damn fucking goddamn amazing shit thing. So, and this is why I love doing a Liba on you, you know. I figured it's the ultimate joke. Liba does a Liba on me, and I do a Liba on Liba.
I've had 3 people say that are in art school saying that teachers and other students have used the term Liba-esque.
Yeah, oh, that's neat. That's terrific.
You know, they haven't asked me to teach a class or anything,
Right.
but they're using my name at
Right,
least.
well, that's neat.
You
And,
know,
and
in
the same
the
thing
language.
happens. The same thing happens. This is just fucking astonishing. This is amazing. Oh my lord. This is why I loved looking at things like this with Michael Jackson, because Michael would have an
Really?
orgasm over this.
Oh, I
And
wish
you
I could have showed
feel
it to him.
You could feel it in
Wow.
his body. If you're, you know, empathy, this thing with the Egyptian cab driver, that's tuned empathy. And if you stood next to Michael Jackson and let your empathy flow, you could feel in his body language him having
Really?
an orgasm over just the first inch, you know,
Wow.
just opening it. Why are science and the arts joined at the hip? Because they're both modes of perception, and they are both modes of altering perception. And okay, if we regard the human race as having a single perceptual envelope, then they are both tools of expanding that common human perceptual envelope. Now, okay, you can say, Bloom, what an asshole you are. how can you say that humanity has a common perceptual envelope? I mean, there are people in Dhaka or people in Islamabad who don't perceive things the way you perceive things at all. No, we have certain things in common. Language. That's part of the basic perceptual envelope. We probably got it 2.5 million to 100,000 years ago. The concept of writing. Even the people in Dhaka who are illiterate know what writing is and know what a book is. The concept of television. Even the people in Dhaka who can't write and have never been able to own a television understand what a television is. Cell phones. This is all a perceptual envelope. Now, when you think of this as our perceptual package, our total perceptual package, you can see that over the course of historical time, we've been adding elements to this perceptual package. Language. The book, language would have been, again, 2.5 million years to 100,000 years ago. The book, that would have been added approximately 2,800 years ago to 2,300 years ago. Reading, of course, which goes along with the book and the alphabet, all those things go together. The cell phone, the 1990s, when they became common, the 2000s when they became ubiquitous.
I have one in my pocket, and it looks just like the Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly, the flip thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's
so,
the same thing.
okay, now let's imagine this process in the future. 100 years from now, what are we going to have? Things that you and I cannot imagine. Is it going to do anything to the common envelope of human perception? You bet your buckus.
Yeah, the internet has done that.
Yeah, right. And so there are going to be more technological advances that you and I can no more foresee than if we'd been in 1890. We could have foreseen the ubiquity of a cell phone. And those are going to expand the perceptual envelope. But the technology is not the only tool of perception. Once upon a time, there was a new technology. And that new technology involved, instead of figuring out when reindeer or other big ungulates were going to ramble through your territory and then setting up camp at the time when they were going to pass through and just bagging as many of them as you could in order to eat meat. That was one approach, and it worked. It was a brilliant new approach, figuring out the timing of things. That's why humans, in all probability, began 30,000 years ago, over 30,000 years ago, to mark down calendars on eagle bones and the bones of baboons and on a mammoth tusk. They marked down little calendars.
Oh, okay.
Because if you used a calendar, you could figure out when these herding animals were going to arrive. Then, about 8,000 years ago, came up with a whole new approach to that. Instead of waiting for the animals to arrive, why don't we make friends with them? Why don't we become their team leaders? Why don't we make them hang around us so that we don't have to move all over the place to find them? And they'll move wherever, we'll take care of finding new fresh grass for them and stuff like that, but they'll always be there at our beck and call. After all, they're friendly creatures. If you run into an infant, and you try to raise it by hand, it'll stick to you for the rest of its life. Take advantage of that. Okay, so this was the domestication of animals, right? Now, this is a new technology in its own way, having the animals stick with you in your neighborhood. But it's more than a new technology. Every new technology provides a new metaphor. A new metaphor. So approximately 5,000 years after we developed animal domestication, we finally figured we could use animal domestication both to have meat whenever we wanted it, or milk if that's what we preferred, and we could use it as a metaphor. And along came a religion that used it as a metaphor. It called its leading figure, its central icon, the Good Shepherd. It called those of us who believe in him as sheep. It used the shepherding metaphor, the animal domestication metaphor.
Thought of it that way.
Okay, so you and I do not contribute to the technological leaps directly. We're not Steve Jobs. We do not create new iPhones and iPads and stuff like that. But we're metaphor makers. We're metaphor makers. And we grab hold of things that have never been clear to humans at all, that have lurked somewhere in the mystery of our emotional being, of our second self, of our non-conscious self. And we grapple with them, and we grapple with issues in the real world around us using metaphor. Well, it's just as important to develop the metaphor of shepherding as it is to develop the reality in the material world of shepherding. It's just as important to develop the metaphor of the computer as it is to build the computer. Now, if we wanted to quibble about it, I would say developing the computer is the more important of the two, because without that you can't have the metaphor. But if you go back, if you look at the new book, The God Problem, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it.
No,
You
no.
must. You must.
I want to.
You and I have been single-purposed, and you've been single-purposed for your art. What did you think of that?
Incredible. So this is
Yeah.
based on the global brain.
Yeah,
Did you say that?
yeah.
I haven't read that one yet.
He really freaked me out with the whole, coming from bacteria and just
Very
I was
wow.
like,
Wow.
Isn't it amazing? I just find it an astonishing experience. Yes, it's tactile.
Tactile.
Yeah.
there's some that are more tactile.
Yeah.
Yeah, very beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have this, I told you, I have this whole 220 photo shoot that I did of Liba, doing a Liba on Liba,
Yeah.
deconstructing his face and everything, and it's got some wonderful pictures in it.
Pick it up.
Yeah, just take it over there so you can actually see it.
The thing with that book, that's actually an older book, but I wanted to bring that because I did this right after I read The Global Brain. I'm thinking
Aha.
about bacteria and
Oh, wow.
organic
Oh, neat.
stuff. So it's abstract, but it's not. It's very microbiology.
Single purpose for my whatever it is, my omnology, my trying to put all the arts and sciences and history together.
Water treason. Global plastic meetings. Low diversion. Perverted. Trapped inside corporate bottles. Crime against humanity. Are nature's majesties. Streams, rivers, lakes, and oceans. Foreclosed and stolen from the source. Stolen water. Forced compliance. Monstrous blue gold ownership. High water. Low water. No water power. No water rights. Fluidity dam. All life taken from us. It's a water theft. It's a water theft. 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 Theft.
You and I have been single-purposed, and you've been single-purposed for your art. I've been single-purposed for my whatever it is, my omnology, my trying to put all the arts and sciences and history together and crystallize them into new lenses with which other people can see the world, hopefully in entirely different ways, the world inside them and the world outside them. So, to the extent that we are true to our single-purposing, we will become like those ants that take a stray half-inch out of the crowd and in the process explore that half-inch for the crowd and explore the crowd's ambit, the crowd's perception of its world.